Now what I'll do is I'll rattle off a whole bunch of bands that Ginger's been a part of. Blues Incorporated he started with, okay. Then he really cut his teeth with the Graham Bond organisation, where he met Jack Bruce. They immediately started arguing, and there's a famous story somewhere where Ginger got so upset he pulled a knife on old Jack. And Jack Bruce, many years later, was sort of saying their arguments were for the ages, apparently. They're quite famous and got into the biff and the whole thing, as you did back in the day. You know, they were fighters, not lovers. Okay, so what it is, what goes on is that what you've got with Jack Bruce and all that sort of stuff, that's where they met, and all this sort of business with the Graham Bond organisation and all that sort of stuff. And then from there was a young Eric Clapton and all of that. So and he was with the Yardbirds, and then he moved on and got Cream and all of that stuff, and bang, there it was. Sunshine You Will Love, Fresh Cream, White Room, you know, Disraeli Gears and classics, you know, kind of thing. And so what happens is they lasted literally 2 years. The fights with Ginger and Jack became so famous it split the band up pretty much. And Ginger and Eric went to form Blind Faith. And one of the things with Blind Faith is Brad turned me on to a couple of tunes, which is Do What You Like, which is again in 5/4, and it's very much like a Take 5 kind of thing, but rocky. So you go bum 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 bum. Now, if I did that in a jazz band for Take 5, I get the sack. But the thing about Ginger is he put the oomph into it, okay? So he put he put a bit of ginger on it. So and always remember at the same time, you've got bands like Jethro Tull. You knew I was going to bring up sort of thing. I'm Jethro Tull tragic, but what it is they had the same kind of 5/4 with Living in the Past. Okay, so there's that. So that's in 5/4 in a subdivision of 3 and 2 to make 5. Okay, so that's what goes on there. That's that bit there. Now, one of the things about that sort of stuff is that when you're going into Sunshine of Your Love, da 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 da, bum 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 bum, ba da 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 da. And so on it goes. It's backwards, okay? So instead of it being, it's the other way round, but in a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, that kind of thing. But actually, that's pretty easy to work out. But as far as talking about the style, Ginger's style with that, he seemed to love, that seems to pop up everywhere. Da-da-da, 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 crash. Or whatever it is. It's there somewhere all the time. And that's just another part of his style, you know, that kind of thing. Making it very rigid, you know. Wum bum 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 da 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 bum 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 like that. And that's what goes on there. That's something I picked up fairly early, but I always sort of knew it was there. But when I put it under the microscope, it seems to bob up in other songs that slipped by me, you know, that kind of thing. So there's that business there. Now, Brad's talked about Passing the Time. Those were the days, Deserted Cities of the Heart. I've talked about Do What You Like a little bit there and all that. Go check them out. I mean, you've just got classic Ginger with that beat that he's got, you know, that kind of thing. So it's quite distinctive the way that he did it. Now, I'll talk about a little bit about what happened with 2 bass drums and stuff. What goes on is, I mean, you know, we all start with a single bass drum, and especially in the 60s, who ever heard of a double bass drum until you got to Louis Bellson with Duke Ellington, right? Now, with Duke Ellington, I mean, that's one of the best of the big bands, okay? And then you've got one of the best of the drummers in Louis Bellson. And you've got a band that works fast. So, you know, when you're doing your typical... That's all well and good, but Duke Ellington took it up a few more notches. So Louis Bellson actually ended up getting the double bass drum set up. Why? What does this have to do with our ginger, you might ask? Well, the story goes that what happened was that after Louis Bellson left for a short time, he was in and out of Duke Ellington. He always, he was always a part of Duke Ellington, but he went off, did his own things. And a wonderful drummer by the name of Sam Woodyard took over with Duke Ellington. And he carried on with the two bass drums, as you would, once it's done, once all, like Hi-Fi Ellington Uptown with Louis Bellson's Skin Deep, that kind of thing, which was all the rage in the late 50s and all of that sort of stuff. I remember getting it home and going, whoa, double bass drum. And what happens is you take a two feel, let's say. So, take your left foot, put it to the left bass drum. You're starting to get a Louis Bellson kind of deal. Move it along to Sam Woodyard with Duke Ellington, and then they toured England. And the story goes that Keith Moon and Ginger Baker went to the same concert. They were talking and all that sort of business, and they were blown away with two bass drums because Keith was probably a little bit more famous, I suppose, with The Who and all that by that stage. He went straight off to Primary and said, I want that. So he was the first to have two bass drums in England, with that kind of style. And Ginger Baker always said, I wanted, different specifications. And there's the famous picture of him at Royal Albert Hall, I think, and he's got two different size bass drums. So he's got like a 20 and then a 22, and that's quite common now. But go back to 1965 and 66, it wasn't that common.